intense dreams, and I wake up frequently throughout the night, and it amazes me sometimes that I can have been asleep for 20 minutes and I feel like I've been through 1,000 experiences and they've taken up a week. And I wonder if it's the same kind of thing, that you don't quite have that physical grasp on time. Because I think time ultimately can actually be quite restricting if you're always focusing on time. Do you get in a state where you're not considering time?
Yeah, I mean, time doesn't normally distort that much in the experiences, but it does occasionally. I don't think there's any relationship to dream. I mean, a lot of people will go that route without body experiences.
I think maybe it's the only way that someone who hasn't experienced it can try and relate. Just two entirely separate things. But do you find for most people that it's they want to understand what it is, but how can they until they experience it?
Well, yeah, that's I suppose why with a lot of my work I've been focusing on trying to help people have an experience, so then they can relate to what I'm talking about, and that's the best way to explore all of this. Even people who are sort of sceptical about the experiences and stuff like that. So because within my artwork I've developed structures that are specially designed to help you get into a trance state, which could lead to an OBE if the person is able to get to that point.
Do people need to be ready in some way as well? Which is maybe, I don't know, is that something within their control or out of their control?
It's a hard question to answer. You'd have to probably work with a whole range of people and see whether the technologies I've developed and also the techniques I work with can help that person have an experience and see what the differences are. I think most people could have some sort of experience. I mean, there's statistics that say that 10% of the population have them naturally, at least once in their life. So if that's the case, then it seems likely that with help, most people could do it.
I think, I mean, it's such a fascinating topic anyway, but the main reason that I find your approach to it so interesting is because the only time I've ever read about out-of-body experience OBEs is when people talk about having a near-death experience. And I've never really come across it being discussed the way that you discuss it, where it's something that you can get into a state and you can kind of enter into consciously. And the experiences I've read from people, it's been where they've almost passed over, or they've had that near-death experience and then they've experienced that and then come back down. So this kind of puts a whole new light on it, that people could choose to enter into that and choose to experience it.
Well, I mean, near-death experiences, there's obviously a relationship, I think. And it's very interesting in terms of science and looking at the whole thing in that area.
Yeah.
It's very hard to argue these things are hallucinations when you're talking about a brain with no activity in it.
Yeah.
So in terms of that area, I'm very interested in near-death experiences. I haven't had one personally.
Yeah.
It's definitely an interesting area.
Yeah. And you talked about your artwork as well, and there are a couple of websites that have your information and details of your work on, and we'll get onto one of those in a moment because that maybe takes us in a slightly different direction. But you have your own personal website which has on it photos of your various art projects and art installations, and you were talking about is it an installation that you've created that will help people get into a trance state?
That one's called EpiScene, because I like the idea of it being like an in-between.
Yeah.
Between opposites.
Yeah.
I like the idea of it not, being some state outside of that. So that's why I call it that. Bit poetic.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the first one I designed and built. It was about 10 years ago I built that.
How did you have the intuition to, had you been working with art already?
Yeah, I mean I did art at university and then started working in that area and doing exhibitions all over the world and stuff. So.
Was it always obvious to you that you'd bring these two things together to work with, the out-of-body experiences and the art, or was it at that point 10 years ago where you thought you could merge them?
It was something I was conscious of. I wasn't sure whether I would be, how open I would be about the whole thing in terms of my art career, because I suppose you're always conscious of whether it could affect your career as an athlete by being too open about things like that.
About spiritual stuff. Yeah, definitely.
So initially I was maybe hesitant about how I talked about where the projects were supposed to be and exactly how I envisioned them. But later on, I just thought this is the key factor really in this work. So, so I sort of moved more to that area. And then I built another installation called Lamb, which uses a complete immersive experience. It uses sound, light. One version even uses temperature, so it affects everything in the space around you. Because I've got a theory that possibly the way the atmosphere is, the humidity and things like that in the atmosphere have an effect on OBEs, possibly. Colour of light, which again is to do with that thing of the way your vision works that I see in blue sometimes.
Yeah.
In Gansfeld experiments, which they do in telepathy research, they'll use red light because it means that your pupils completely dilate.
Yeah.
So your mind is waiting for information, but nothing's coming.
Yeah.
So that can help activate your psychical faculties. So and it's also been used in seances and things like that for centuries sort of things. So.
It's just fascinating because it's an area that I know so little about, and it just seems, even in this short conversation we're having now, there are so many things that I'm thinking I want to find out about that. But even within maybe, I don't know, the loosely termed sort of spiritual community, do you find that this is an area that people really don't seem to know much about, or that these experiences, do you come across many people that have naturally had these, or do most people come to you wanting them but not?
I come across people who've maybe had 2 or 3, something like that, 1 to 5 experiences in their life, but generally not more than that. That's the most common scenario. So often I get people who had that 1 initial experience or 2 initial experiences and they want to get back to it. So that's...
And do you find that they try to bring that on, or that they just naturally entered into it?
Well, when I do workshops, I teach a whole range of techniques, and as well as ways to help the process. Like being aware of things like the moon phase, which in my experiences, I've found 5 days prior to the full moon is the key time when I get vibrational experiences, which can lead to OBEs. So, subtle things like that.
This is like over 20 years of you having these experiences and then trying to somehow figure out what factors are affecting them, which just seems such an expansive field, because already you've touched upon light, humidity, temperature, moon phases. Do you ever think you've reached a point where you think, okay, these are the factors that affect it, or is it like kind of constantly you're coming across new things that you think might influence?
Well, the way I look at it is